Okay, so we'll start right away. Thank you all for joining. Aditya, should we wait for another 5 minutes? It's still
Right.
not.
Yeah, it is still 9:45, not at a quiet time.
Okay, I think we can get started now. We have a very healthy attendance today, which is good. So, thank you all for joining. We'll go over the 3 point agenda today again. Um, Start with the flashcard for pair programming. I'll spend about 5 minutes on it. Then I'll go over Kanban. Kanban is a very, very big topic in Agile. I don't think the limited time that we have in these webinars is going to do any justice to that subject, but we'll try to cover as much as possible. And third, I have striked out the Confluence tool demo. I'll try to get to it if I can, but I have a feeling that we may just consume our whole time just talking about pair programming in Kanban. Okay, and I also want to leave some time for question and answers. So for all of you, I think most of you, you have been coming here pretty regularly. There's a question box in your webinar uh, panel. So feel free to write your question there. And myself and my associate Aditya will try to answer all your questions. Okay, so let's talk about pair programming. Okay, this is our flashcard today. I believe we talked about pair programming when we were going over the XP feedback loops. So I'll just read the definition here. It's something that you may have heard a lot, even if you're not familiar with Agile. So pair programming is an XP technique where an engineer, which is the first engineer, writes program, and the other engineer, which is the second engineer, watches that program being written. Okay, so it's a pretty simple definition. A little more elaboration on that. While the first engineer is focused on the syntactical and sequential details of the program, the second programmer checks the correctness of the approach and a high level logic. Okay, so um, it's a very powerful technique. Um, it's focused only on the software development part of it. And XP methodology, which is one of the agile methodology, uh, made this technique very popular. I myself was introduced to XP way back in 2002. And I love pair programming. I think it is very, very strong in terms of getting the code reviews done instantly, and also there's a lot of knowledge sharing that happens. Okay, but the biggest advantage of doing pair programming is the quality of the code that you produce after the whole program is written, because you're doing instant review. The quality is very superior. Okay, there have been studies done by various different institutes and school of thoughts. They have indeed found that in software development, if you do the pair programming right, you it, it, initially it may appear that you are spending more. It is expensive because you have two people writing a piece of code, um, but the studies have found that it is actually not expensive. It is less expensive than one person writing the code at once and then making it go through the review, number of reviews, and to be able to achieve an equal quality code that you would get in a pair programming. Okay, so my suggestion to you, if you're new to Agile, it would be a good idea to experiment with this. There are, however, um, quite a few impediments, I want to say, with the pair programming. Most of them are because of distributed teams these days. Most of the software development projects, they have team members which are scattered across the globe, and but if there is a chance that your team is co-located, or certain parts of the program or modules are being developed by a co-located team, this is going to be a great experiment. Also, sometimes people they question the there are personalities that also come into play. There are some programmers which do not want their code to be watched as they're writing it, um, and there are programmers who don't like to watch code as well. Okay, so there are personalities that may play a role in success of the pair programming exercise that you may do. But when it is done right, with the right attitude, right people, it it will give you phenomenal results. Okay, so again, the main advantage is that you get a very superior quality code because you're doing instant reviews. Okay, that's about pair programming. Let's move on to Kanban. Okay, so Kanban has recently become very popular. Um, Recently, in the sense, past several years, um, it, it's it's it has some practices that are very useful. You can Most of the people use Kanban clubbed with other methodologies, like even if you're using Scrum or XP or any other agile methodology, you can still use Kanban boards. They are very good tools for keeping a tab on how the progress is being made in the project, by the whole team. It's a very visual, very interactive way of looking at what is going on in your project. Um, there are these 5 things that we are going to cover today, and all of them, they are pretty they they are pretty deep. We'll try to not go too deep into every single one of them in the interest of time. But yes, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. And we may even take up Kanban, agenda another time as well, if you're not able to finish everything. So the items that we're going to cover: Kanban board, how it looks like, what is work in progress, or WIP as it's called, what are WIP limits, the advantage of using WIP limits and who sets the WIP limits, etc. Then there's cumulative flow diagram, or CFD. And I'll also show you a very good example of how a Kanban works on a typical day. Okay, so a day in Kanban, it's a web resource that I'm going to show you. Um, very, very beautifully elaborated example. Okay, so we'll take that up at the very end. All right, so let's start with how a Kanban board really looks like. Okay, so these days there are all these electronic tools that are available, software tools, agile tools that are available. I'm showing you one of snippet of one of the tools that we are using here, which is Greenhopper, clubbed with Jira. Uh, this is how a Kanban board would look like. There are various different perspectives in Jira that you can use. Kanban is one of them. It's very useful to see, as a manager or as a agile coach, Scrum Master, you would want to see, as you're going through a sprint or an iteration, you would want to see how your stories are progressing through the whole workflow. Okay, so this is really showing you a workflow. This is the Kanban board. In the gray titles here that you see on the top are the different categories or different phases in the workflow of a particular story. So all these cards that you see here with the IDs, like ops 450, ops 473, like these, they are all IDs of the stories or your activity tasks. And the the columns that you see here are different phases. So ready is the first initial phase, or some people also have new. We have new. I had to clip it in my screenshot. But ready, there could be a blogged state, a story could be in. Then there's in progress. The stories that are being worked on, the stories that need review, final review before they're actually done. Okay, so um, the workflow nodes here, or the categories that you see, or states of the story that you see here, there are no standard states for the stories in Kanban. Okay, these are the states that you build for your own project that is the most relevant to you. Okay, some teams they have just three states, ready, in progress, and done. Okay, it's a very basic, simplest way of treating it as a Kanban board. But there are teams which have up to 6 or 7 different states, okay, which is suitable for their needs. Okay, so in this case, you can see there are all these stories, this whole list of stories, and I had to clip it. There are more are sitting in ready state. Okay, which means that they can be taken up. Then there are all these that are in the blocked state. Okay, they're either waiting for something, some resource, or they're blocked due to something that is needed to continue working on them. Okay, and then there are in progress. So you can see there are several stories in progress state. Then there are 3 stories that you can see here which are awaiting review, and there are this whole bunch of stories in this list that are done. Okay, so this is how, so you can see there's a flow from left to right, and the numbers that you see here, so you can see, the font is very small, but under ready here you see 19, which means that there are 19 stories here. Okay, so this is called the, so if you summate everything, ready, blocked, in progress, final review, and done, not done. Um, the first 4 of these, this is called the work in progress. Okay, don't confuse it. Don't confuse WIP with the in progress state here. In progress is just a status of, okay. But when we are talking about WIP or work in progress, it means everything that you see in the Kanban board except for the done, which means that these are the stories that are being looked at, or they are being followed. Okay, so that, which is called WIP in Agile terms, okay, or in Kanban terms. And again, there's a flow from left to right. It helps. It gives a very visual indication on how we are doing in a project. Okay, so this is the very basic Kanban board. Um, Let me elaborate what are WIP limits. Okay, WIP limits are very it's a simple concept to understand, but a very complex and needs a lot of discipline to kind of master, to get used to it. So in this slide, I'm trying to elaborate, with simple example here, what WIP limits are. Okay, now we'll start with the top left corner here. So let's say you have a simple Kanban board. Okay, you have just 3 states of a story. You have a to do, which is a list of everything that you want to do. You have a doing state, which is what you're working on. And then you have a done state. Okay. Now, if you can set a limit. I mean, as a team, you want to set a limit to your state, like how many stories can be in a particular state. Um, if you reach that limit, then you don't want to put any more stories in that state. So in this case, if you're setting WIP limit of 1, okay, so what is happening is that you have all these to-do items, and you're working on just one item at a time. Okay, you have all these resources available to do the work, but you have set the WIP limit too low. So what happens is that there are people idling. Okay, so you don't want to set a WIP limit too low. Okay, and then on the right bottom, which is the other extreme of the limit, where you have, again, the same 3 states where you have set a little WIP limit of 5, which means that you have picked up 5 items and you have less resource who can focus on that. So what's happening is that people are overworked, or there are tasks that are not getting enough attention, or people start cutting corners. And what happens is your flow again is slow. Okay, in both the cases, in the WIP limit being low, of 1 and WIP limit being high of 5. So you'll see that there are less number of stories uh, that are reaching done in a specified period of time. Okay, so your flow is slow. Okay, now in the center here you see that there's, if you set the WIP limit of 2, you are getting a faster flow. Okay, so you have all these to do items and you decide that you want to do work on 2 tasks at most in parallel. So in that case you have, you're optimizing the resources that you have available to work on those, which is why you have a faster flow. Okay, so the whole point of this slide is that you are able to understand the importance of WIP limit. The whole reason we are putting WIP limits is because you want to improve that flow. So I'm going to go back to the older slide. There's a flow that is from left to right. Okay, and you want to smoothen that flow. So from ready to done state, you want to optimize that flow. You want to make it as smooth as possible. Okay, so that you can, and there are various advantages of doing that. First of all, you're able to predict very easily. How based on your flow, you're able to predict. How many stories you're going to produce when. You're also able to optimize the resource utilization. Okay, which is also a very big advantage. Okay, so Kanban so far, from whatever that we have learned, is it's all about the flow. It's all about improving the flow. Okay, and also giving a visual depiction of how that flow is going. Kanban board makes a very good information radiator. For those of you who are aware, who are familiar with the term information radiator, it's a very good information radiator. Okay, these days almost all the agile tools, software tools that we have, they have various different information, and Kanban boards are right at the center of it. Also, there are cumulative flow diagram, which we are going to look at next. Okay, so again, just to summarize here on the WIP limits, it's important to set the WIP limit. Just knowing the WIP or work in progress in a Kanban board is not enough. Okay, to optimize your flow, you have to set the WIP limit, and setting WIP limit is not an easy thing. It is something that takes time and discipline and analysis at times. So if you are Scrum Master, if you are a project manager and you decide that you want to use Kanban boards, you want to start, you want, initially you would want to set a WIP limit that is, either, a calculated number, or, use your gut feeling, what you feel is the best WIP limit to start. But the important thing is, iteration after iterations, or after regular intervals, you're coming back to your Kanban board, or the history of the Kanban board, or history of your flow, and you're trying to fine tune those WIP limits for every state. Okay, so in this case, we are just showing a simple example where you have just 3 states. But like I said, there could be teams who decide to use 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 states, through which their stories are flowing. Okay, so it becomes all the more important to set WIP limits, and we are going to look at a very good example, which I'm saving for the last, where you would see how Kanban really works in practicality. Okay, so far, WIP limits are very important. Team sets it. Over a period of time, you regularly revisit the WIP limits and try to optimize that WIP limit. If you optimize your WIP limits, fine tune it to a good value, you'll be able to optimize your resources most efficiently. You'll be able to increase the flow, which is the most important thing, which is the end goal of this whole Kanban exercise. All right, moving on. So cumulative flow diagram. Okay, so there are this CFD is something that is also embedded in almost all the software agile tools that are available out there. And cumulative flow diagram, I want to say that they have not they're not very recent. It's not an invention by Agile, but Agile has is trying to promote this cumulative flow diagram way of, visual way of looking at things. Agile is really good at, looking at things and with an at an objective level, at a very objective, trying to quantify everything and very visual. Okay, so all the information radiators, if you read about information radiators in Agile, you'll see that there are, everything is visual. Okay, I myself am a very visual learner, and I get bored very easily if I see a lot of text written down somewhere, or there's this pages of documentation that I have to go through to understand what the progress is, or I have to read status reports. It's and the way, if the same information is presented visually, there are, you're able to grasp it instantly, and you're able to make very critical decisions based on that. Okay, which is very important as a manager. So let's see what's being depicted here. Okay, so on the x-axis you see time. Okay, on the y-axis you see estimates. Now these estimates are can have flexible, you can choose y-axis to be estimates, or um, you can choose them to be story points or hours, okay, or quantum of work that needs to be done. There are different different units that you can use on the y-axis. Okay, the blue line here is showing you how much work needs to be done. The orange line shows that work is, that development work is done and it's going into testing. So the blue shade here is all the development work. The orange shade here is all the testing effort that's going on. And then the green shade here is, you can consider it done, or, it has been accepted by the customer. So what we see here is that, we start plotting. So, based on the unit that you have chosen on the y-axis against time, once you start plotting these, how much dev work you are doing over a period of time. So you'll see a trend, that is an upward trend. So you're doing, your development effort is growing with time, in the sense, this is a cumulative number. Okay, so you started with 0, and as you're developing, you're doing, this number is going to rise, and there'll be an upward trend here. Same thing with the testing, how much testing effort you're putting in, how many story points, how many hours of effort. Okay, quantum of effort, that's what you're plotting here. So as you're plotting that, this orange line would emerge. Okay, and then you'll also keep a track on, what is being done, which is being completed, which will result in your green line being plotted here in this graph. Okay. Um, One of the things that you'll see very quickly, when you're keeping an eye on the cumulative flow diagram on a day-to-day basis, is that, if the gaps between the two lines is increasing, like in this case, you can see that this dev, at this point in time, dev had a high value here, and, testing had a low value here. So you can see that there's a huge gap between dev and testing. Okay, what it indicates that, there's some kind of an impediment in this, in the team. Okay, some kind of a blockage, or there is something that needs to be taken care of, which is preventing your test resources, or your stories from getting tested in time. Okay, could be various different things, which are not reflected here, but there could be, it's a visual cue to you as a project manager, as a scrum master, as an agile coach, that there is some problem, that needs attention immediately. Okay, and um, another extreme could be an air bubble. Okay, which you see down here, where you see that the testing effort has a low value, whereas the accepted has a high value. Okay, what the air bubble means that there's very low work in progress. Okay, so we looked at the work in progress just now. It means that um, either the team is idling, or they there could be some there is some kind of a blockage in the whole flow. Okay, that may not be giving test team enough stories to test, for example. Okay, but air bubble means low work in progress. Okay, so this is one way of looking at cumulative flow diagram. Okay, I'm going to show you another um, representation of how a cumulative flow diagram looks like. um, in this case also, I'm sorry, I'm having to pause just a little bit. Okay, so this is another representation of cumulative flow diagram here. In this case, you have the same three. I've kept it simple. You're plotting three things. You have the light blue uh, area, which are the stories that are queued. Okay, the green area where you have the stories that are, or work items that have started or are in progress. And then you have this dark blue area, which is representing all the stories that have been done. Okay, so again, we're keeping it simple for elaboration, but in practicality, you may have different layers. Okay, so you may have more than just three lines, depending on how many states you have in your Kanban board. Okay, in your story workflow. So everything is driven by what the life cycle for your team is for a story. Okay, what stages it's going through. So in this case, it is going through just three, which is good. It's simple and it's easy to explain what you're trying to capture here. So um, f- from well, let's look at the lead time here. Okay, so on the bottom left here, you see the lead time, which means the time between a particular story. It's parallel to the time axis. Okay, so the lead time here, one story from the point it is queued to the point it is done. Okay, so that is a lead time. Okay, so it has to it's you had an idea, you created a story, you queued it, it took some time to get it started, and then some more time to implement it and uh, make it reach a done state. Okay, so that is a lead time. And then there's a cycle time. So cycle time again is parallel to the x-axis. How much time it takes for a story from the time it is taken up when you start working on it to the point when it is done. Okay, that is a cycle time. Okay, so from lead time and cycle time, you're also trying to, when you're fine tuning your um, WIP limits, when you're fine tuning your effort, when you're trying to optimize your effort in your team, you keep an eye on the lead time. Okay, and cycle time. So you want to reduce the lead time and cycle times here. Let's look at a couple of other attributes of cumulative flow diagrams. um, you can also find the work in progress. Okay, the um, the difference between what's being in this example, what started with what is done against the y-axis is really your work in progress. Okay, so at any given time, you can find out what is your work in progress. Okay, and then you have the backlog that you can also see here, because your light blue area is the area that is queued. That means that you have identified the tasks that you have to do. You have identified the stories that you have to work on. You have you have made the stories ready for development. um, and that area between between time it is queued and what is actually being done, okay, at any given point in time, will tell you your backlog, okay, how thick your backlog is at that time. Again, so what you're trying to do here, this is a practical representation in a simple form of how a cumulative flow diagram actually looks like. What you're trying to achieve is you want a smoother flow, okay. You want a consistent gap between any two lines that are being plotted on the graph here. That means you have a very efficient flow, okay. So that's what you're looking for, okay. And as a manager, you can use impediment analysis, you can do air bubble analysis, you can do lead time analysis, cycle time. You can see all these different attributes of a cumulative flow diagrams at any given time and make decisions based on that, take actions from there. Okay, so very, very useful tool, cumulative flow diagram. Right now, I mean, I've been using cumulative flow diagram for more than 5 years now, and past 2 years, all our decisions have been very closely been considered from cumulative flow diagram. I cannot imagine any day where I don't see a cumulative flow diagram for my team, and deduce some kind of a conclusion from it, which is actionable. Okay, so at this point in time, I would just like to take a little bit of time to look at any questions that you may have. Feel free to answer them. Feel free to ask them in the questions box that is there. Um, Pertaining to anything that we have gone through today, like pair programming or cumulative flow diagram. One of the things that I just want to go back very quickly and show you um, is the flow again. Okay, so just if you remember, Kanban is all about improving the flow. Okay, so from left to right, when if you decide that you want to, it is also possible that you don't use iterations. I mean, iterations is an agile thing, yes, but it is also possible that you may not want to use iterations. You just want to use a Kanban board where you are creating tasks regularly, and those tasks are being worked upon through this different states of this task all the way to done. Okay, so it is possible that you may not even be working in an iteration. Okay, but there are teams that you use that use Kanban in their iterations as well. Like this, the snippet that I have taken is a snippet from an actual iteration. So we are running, this is a sprint that we are running, and we have taken all these stories up, and they are going through that sprint as tasks through all these states. Okay, let's look at some of the questions. Do you have a program that plots these diagrams? Yes, so good question. um, like I was saying, that there are these softwares that are available these days. um, I'm using Jira with the Greenhopper. So Greenhopper has it shows everything. I mean, it's not just the cumulative flow diagram. It will uh, show you statistics in your sprint in various different forms of chart. It could be burn down chart, burn up charts, cumulative flow diagram, which is the most popular of all. Yes, and there are almost every tool, whether you're using Mingle or any other, they're all using cumulative flow diagrams, burn down charts, and everything. They plot them as you're going through the sprint. Okay, but there are certain prerequisites that when you're using the tool, you have to feed data into that tool every day. You have to log work, you have to have your estimates correct, you have to make sure that you are keeping the remaining time on the stories correctly. Okay, more questions. What are the different states within a WIP? Also, how is a team structure different in Kanban and Scrum? Okay. um, Different states in WIP. I'm not sure I quite understood that, but I think I have a sense of what you're trying to get at. Um, we go back to the very first slide that I was showing you. Okay, so like in this case, you see ready, blocked, in progress, final review, done. Okay, these are the different states that I and my team have decided to use for our stories. Okay, it's possible that you may want to decide that you don't need five states. You may need just three. You may want to just do ready, in progress, and done. Okay, or you may decide that may need more than five. You may want to have a final review. You may want to have a testing. You may want to have another couple of states in between ready and done than what are being shown here. Okay, so it is really customizable. No matter what tool you're using, you can easily customize the different states that you're trying to use for your story. Okay, right, any more questions? Yeah, I just want to emphasize on this piece again, that there are no standard work in progress categories. There are no standards. Okay, you make them for your own team. Okay. Okay, difference. The question is difference between Kanban board and product backlog, or are they the same? Right, so Kanban board, all right, there are two different things. Okay, so what you product backlog is just a union of uh, all the stories or all the features that you want in your product. Okay, that's your product backlog. Okay, now you may want to prioritize and pull some of those stories into your Kanban board and put them in a ready state or a new state. Okay, so I would not mix product backlog with Kanban board. Um, Product backlog is a different entity in itself. It is used, it's something that is used as an input to your Kanban board when you're trying to build it. Um, but treat them as a separate thing. Okay. All right, let's move on. So I want to show you how Kanban really works in a typical day. Okay, so it's a web link. I'm just gonna click on this. It'll open up in the browser. Let me know when you can see it. Okay. All right. So I hope you can see my screen. Should be seeing Chris Crisp's blog in the browser. All right. So this is something that I found online. Um, Very beautifully explained. I actually got in touch with Crisp as well just to congratulate him. The way he explained it very beautifully. Couldn't resist the temptation to share it with all of you. Okay. So on the left hand side, you see this beautiful um, diagram of how a team is working. Okay. So we'll start from the top. Okay. Let's say this is your team. The people in red that you see here are the product owners. The people in blue here are the team members. People in green here, you can call them deployers. In this example, there are four states. Okay, you have a backlog state. Okay, somebody was asking question just now whether this is your what is your backlog. So now this backlog could be your sprint backlog, your prioritized backlog, whatever you want to call it. It may or may not be your total entire product backlog. It's very unusual to treat this as your total product backlog. So let's say this is your backlog, and then you have a selected state, and you have a develop state, which is also broken down into ongoing and done, and then you have a deploy state, and finally you have a live state. Live meaning that it is delivered to the customer. Okay. Now, um, so what happens is at the beginning you see that there are all these numbers that are given to these states. Okay, so the selected state has two. Okay, so what it's showing is that it has a work in progress limit, WIP limit of 2. Develop has a WIP limit of 2 again. Okay, deploy has a WIP limit of 1. What it means is that these people in green, they would never be asked to deploy more than one story at a time. Okay, all these people in the team in blue, they would not be asked to do any kind of development for more than 2 stories at a time. And the product owner, who is in red here, is not going to prioritize more than 2 stories. Okay, so let's say he prioritized these 2 stories, A and B. These 2 stories, they transition to develop state. Okay, so the developers, team members, they start working on A and B. Okay, they are not going to take more than A and B, even though you can see that the product owner has pulled C and D as soon as this A and B started work. Okay, so C and D are going to sit here while A and B are being worked upon. Okay, so in this case, you can see A gets done in the developer state, B is still being worked on, and A is moved to deploy state. Okay, as soon as A is moved to deploy state, because develop has a work in progress limit of 2, you can pull C from the selected state. Okay, so you can see in this diagram, now C and B are in develop state. Okay, while A is being worked upon for deployment. Now, these people in green, they're trying to do some kind of deployment. Okay, and they're facing some problem. Meanwhile, B gets done. However, you cannot move B to deploy state because A is already sitting there with a WIP limit in deploy as 1. Okay, so even though B is done with development, we cannot request the deploy team to deploy B because they are still trying to deploy A. Okay, now you see that the B is done, C gets done. Meanwhile, the product owner has taken K and D as his prioritized stories and kept it in selected. Okay, so in this diagram, you can see that the development team is done with C and B. They have finished the development. However, they cannot move the C and B further because A is blocking their flow. Okay, so what happens is everybody in the development team, they are trying to assist the deployers here to find out what is causing the problem with A's deployment. Okay, so you can see all of them, they're rushing to help together and trying to deploy A because it is causing an impediment. It's causing a blockage in the whole flow. Okay. And even the product owner has to come out and help here because he can see that he's not able to put anything more in the selected state because K and D are already still lying there. So all of them have to rush and try to deploy A. Okay, so eventually what happens is they figure out what the problem with A was, and they were able to deploy it. A few days later, you notice that again, product owner is back in his own backlog land trying to prioritize stories. The development team realized that they can improve their work in progress limit. Okay, so they have increased it from 2 to 3. You can see that here. Okay, so there are more stories that are being worked upon now, and all these A, B, C, etc., all these stories are live. Okay, so this is showing how what we really mean by a flow. Okay, it may sound simple and very logical and common sense, but it is very powerful. Okay, the way it is represented in a Kanban way, in a Kanban board, and tracked as cumulative flow diagram, it has a, a you know it improves the efficiency of the team phenomenally. Okay, which is why Kanban is very, very popular these days. Even it's very popular even with non-software development kind of work. Okay, so hopefully this was a good elaboration. I loved it, and I share it with everybody I can whenever I can. I will also share this link with you if you want to go back and have a look at it again. um, Meanwhile, if you have any questions, I'll stay on this page and try to answer. Okay, the question is, Scrum has only three roles: product owner, team scrum master. Does Kanban have developers as other roles? Uh, the roles, they don't really matter too much in Kanban. Think of Kanban as a tool, okay, rather than treating Kanban as a whole methodology itself. Okay, there are teams who consider Kanban as a whole methodology, which is fine. So Agile, it's a collection of practices and values. Okay, so if you're following those practices and adhering to those values, you are Agile. Okay, so Kanban is just another tool. Okay, so there are teams, Scrum teams that use Kanban. I am working in teams, we are using Scrum here, a customized version of Scrum, but we also use Kanban. The slide that I was showing you earlier is an actual snippet from what I'm working on right now. So we are using Kanban when we are in the sprint. We use Kanban to see how the work is flowing. Okay, I use cumulative flow diagrams to understand that, where the impediments may be, where could be where may I find air bubbles. Okay, so there are actions that need to be taken from there, and you can use Kanban with Scrum, Kanban with any other, or you can just use Kanban by itself. Okay, hopefully answer that question. Another question here. Okay, develop done, wouldn't that automatically move to testing unless there's a VIP limit? Not sure I understand that question very well. I'll try and attempt to answer it. So VIP limit is, trying to protect you from uh, causing collecting too many issues together. Okay, so VIP limit, you have to fine tune over a period of time. So you set some VIP limit, and you understand as a ground rule that you're not going to take any more work than what is if it goes over a limit, you're not going to take that work. So it's i- if you're referring to this example here, so in this case, develop has a VIP limit of 2. So if you have C and B that are here, you cannot take K or D. Okay, so once you're done with development of C and B, you'll have to wait before you request for B's deployment or C's deployment. Okay, because A is still being deployed. Once A is deployed, then you can request C or B, whichever you want first. Okay, because you have set the VIP limits like that. Okay. Can I make the presentation available? Yes, the presentation and the recording of this whole session would be made available to YouTube. There are other older presentations there as well. You can go back and play it back. Okay, so I'm being told that Kanban was actually originally developed from a manufacturing domain to improve the cycle time, which is good information. Thank you so much. So yes, you know, Kanban is not something that is local to a software development domain. It is something that is being used in various different domains as well. Okay, So we have less than 10 minutes left. Okay, I do want to we don't have time to go over Confluence, the tool, but I do want to go over some polls that I set up to just kind of summarizes everything that we learned today. So I'm going to open a poll. The first one is coming on your screen right now. Okay, so take a couple of minutes to read, and I'm going to close it in about a minute or so. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. All right. So the question is, what is the main advantage of pair programming? Okay, and there are a couple of options from here that you can instantly remove. Extra cost is definitely not an advantage by any stretch of imagination. Less office space is also not an advantage. It's just weird options that are given here. Um, so we are left with knowledge sharing and instant review. I see that a lot of you answered knowledge sharing. Yes, it is an advantage, but not the main advantage. The main advantage of doing pair programming is that you are trying to get an instant feedback. You're trying to get an instant review. You're getting instant code review as you are writing the program. If you remember the XP feedback loops, pair programming is giving you feedback within seconds. Okay, a very powerful concept. Okay, so again, yes, knowledge sharing is a part of pair programming. It is an advantage, but not the main advantage. And also, just a tip for whoever, if any of you are planning to take the Agile certification from PMI, um, if you're familiar with PMP, again, the concept, the patterns and the trends and the questions would be the same as PMP. You would be given a question, and it's possible that more, certain options may be 50% correct or 75% correct, but you have to look out, you have to watch out in that case that try to confuse you. You want to select an option that is 100% correct. Okay, so it can be difficult at times and confusing, like in this case, but with a little bit of training and reading, I'm sure you'll all be able to answer those questions very easily. Okay. Let's do another question and then we'll close out this session. Almost done. All right. So launch the poll, read the question, answer. Just waiting for a couple more people to answer. Okay, so again, it's I I would think that this is a little tough question. Um, um, a lot of you answered product owner, scrum master. Nobody answered CEO, which is great. Okay, so CEO is definitely not the right answer. Um, One thing to remember in Agile, that Agile is very big on collaboration. Everything is supposed to be a team activity. Okay, so the correct answer here is team. Okay, Scrum Master, product owner, yes, they are a part in making that decision, but they are not the sole uh, decision makers. It is really the team all together, everybody together decides what the work in progress limit should be. Excuse me. And this is a very strong concept in Agile. Everything is supposed, collaboration. You'll hear that a lot in any Agile book that you read, whether it is Scrum, XP, or any other, general PMI guidelines. You would hear collaboration word a lot. Okay, so the correct answer here is team. Okay, all right. So I'm going to close the poll. Okay, with that said, um, are there any more questions, any concerns about the answers for the questions that I just asked in the poll? Um, we have a few minutes left. Again, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Gmail. I just wanted to have this another information here that there is a training, ACP training for 21 PDUs. If any of you are interested in getting ACP certification, there's a webinar that is going to be held tomorrow and day after. Okay, it's going to be total 16 hours spread across 2 days, 8 hours each. We'll give you 21 PDUs right away. It's going to cover everything that is under the umbrella of Agile as per the PMI's outline. Okay, uh, it's going to be a very long webinar, but it's going to be a lot of knowledge in that. So if any of you, I see that some of you have already registered for it. So if you have, if you're interested, you can go to this website, or you can just call or email me. Um, Even the last minute registrations, they're always welcomed. Okay, see, there are some questions. Does the Cert School online Agile ACP webinar satisfy PMI contract hour requirement? Yes, it does. It does. We give 21 PDUs, so there'll be some prelude, and there'll be some homework. There'll be a lot of content on the website, on Search School's website. We have more than 120 sample questions right after you finish the training. They are on the website. You will have access to them. You would have my attention. I will work with you if you need me as a consultant to help you understand any topics that you may want to. You would have access to the recorded sessions of the training that will go through the 16-hour interactive webinar training that we'll go through. And there's going to be a lot of content. There'll be ebooks there that you can read. There's going to be bookmarks, the web source contents that I recommend that I have collected over years. You will have access to that on the student portal of Search School. Yes. Uh, okay, isn't Scrum Master or PM's responsibility to determine if it is needed to be reset? Uh, I think we're talking about the second question here. Uh, I'll go back to the Agile principles again. Collaboration is a big thing. So yes, Scrum Master is uh, is one of the decision makers, but not the sole decision maker. It is Agile is more of a democratic approach to achieving the final successful project result, rather than just one person having all the authority to make a decision. Okay, there are many questions actually. Let me see if there's a pattern here. Will the next webinar have the same info? No. The webinar that we are going to have after 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks from again on Friday, 2 weeks from now, is going to be different topics. Okay, every week we have 3 different topics that we cover. The 21 PDU webinar that we have, that I was just advertising here, it is not free. Okay, you can go to the website. Maybe Aditya, you there?
Yes, you can show the website.
Okay, let me just quickly go. So our website is searchschool.com. I'm sorry, we are running a little bit over time here. Almost done. Just want to show you where on the website you can go find information about it. Okay, so webinar, you can click on the buy now, the one that we are having tomorrow. I just clicked on it. Okay, so it's $299, 16 hours of training, a lot of content, lots and lots of content, and many sample questions. Okay, and you'll have my attention too. Okay, 21 PDUs, all 21 PDUs you'll have at the end of Sunday's training. Okay, so you'll have training tomorrow, Saturday, day after, Sunday, and at the end of Sunday's training, you will have the PDUs instantly. Okay, $299 is the final net price. Is the PMP webinar updated to the PMBOK 5th edition? I think that is a question for you, Aditya.
Yes, we have updated that one to the PIMPA 5th edition because there is no more 4th edition class. So we have updated that when we are ready.
What is the cost of tomorrow's Agile training? It's $299. In the interactive sessions, would you be asking participant questions throughout the 6 hours? There'll be, so we'll cover, if you go through the PMI's outline, content outline for the Agile certification, there are different chapters. So at the end of every chapter, there'll be some questions. We will discuss those questions interactively. Also, it'll be very interactive. Like you'll have opportunity to ask questions throughout the training. Okay, so and there are, usually it's a very good knowledge sharing, because there are so many people who come from different backgrounds, and I've always found people who give me a lot of information as well about Agile from their experience. Okay, so it is a very good group knowledge sharing activity. What are the hours of the webinar? So the hours are, the webinar would start at 8 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, 8 a.m. Pacific time or 11 a.m. Eastern time, US time. Okay, all right. I think I've answered almost all the questions here. Okay, and do go to the website, searchschool.com. You'll have that link. Just follow the Agile link there, and you should be able to get to the right place. And tomorrow the webinar starts. So if we have very little time left, but if you are interested at all, please go ahead and register yourself, and we will quickly send you the link to it's going to be a WebEx meeting. So it's going, I'll send you the link to the WebEx. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. And if there were any questions from the topics that we covered today, don't hesitate to drop me an email. I would be more than happy to answer you. And hope to see you all of you and more 2 weeks from now. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye bye.